Clean up the mess before we get back, freak. Don't call us. I stared at the bright yellow sticky note plastered to the glass door. It was 7 in the morning on my 16th birthday, and my stepmother hadn't left me a card. She'd left me a job. I tried the door handle, but it was deadbolted from the other side. Through the glass, I could see the aftermath of the $50 million merger party they'd thrown last night, a party I was banned from because I was an embarrassment. They were off to the Hamptons to celebrate, and they had locked me in the staff quarters with nothing but a chore list. I wasn't a daughter to them. I was just the help. I bent down, lifted the doormat, and grabbed the spare key. I didn't cry. I just clocked in. Have you ever felt less like a child in your own home and more like an unpaid employee? Tell me in the comments. I want to know I'm not the only one. I pushed open the door to the main house and was immediately hit by the smell. A sickening mix of stale champagne, expensive perfume, and truffle oil. The kitchen, usually a pristine showroom of marble and stainless steel, looked like a bomb had gone off inside a delicatessen. Crystal flutes were shattered on the floor. Plates smeared with half-eaten caviar canapes were stacked precariously on the island. A banner hanging crookedly from the ceiling read, 50 million secured. They had celebrated the merger of the century right here, drinking bottles of vintage wine that cost more than my entire wardrobe, while I slept 50 feet away in a room with a drafty window. I pulled up Instagram on my phone. There they were, Caleb and Haley, the Golden Twins, posting selfies from the back of a limousine an hour ago. Hamptons bound. Billionaire life, the caption read. They were wearing matching designer sunglasses that probably cost $2,000 a pair. I felt a familiar, hot lump form in my throat, but I swallowed it down. This wasn't new. This was the algorithm of my life. I remembered last month when I asked my father, Marcus, for $95 to cover my AP chemistry exam fee. He had looked at me over the top of his Wall Street Journal, sighed the sigh of a martyr, and told me, "Money is tight right now, Caitlin. We all have to make sacrifices." I had believed him. I had withdrawn the money from my babysitting stash and paid for it myself, feeling guilty for even asking. 2 days later, he bought Caleb a brand new Range Rover for passing his driver's test on the second try. That was the dynamic. I was the drain on resources. They were the investments. I was the expense. They were the assets. I grabbed a heavy-duty trash bag and started sweeping glass shards into a pile. You might be wondering why I did it. Why didn't I just walk out the front door and never look back? Why was I scrubbing dried brie off the counter on my 16th birthday instead of running away? It's a question I asked myself 1,000 times later, once I was free. But back then, I didn't understand the invisible chains they had wrapped around me. That is the trap of normalizing cruelty. When you are treated like a burden from the moment you can speak, you don't grow up thinking your parents are evil. You grow up thinking you are expensive. You believe that your existence is a debt you have to pay off with servitude. They had groomed me to be grateful for the roof over my head, even if that roof was leaking and located in the servants' quarters. I cleaned because I truly believed that if I made myself useful enough, invisible enough, maybe, just maybe, they wouldn't throw me out completely. I wasn't a daughter to Marcus and Tanya. I was a utility. I was a dishwasher that breathed. I tied off the first bag of trash, the plastic stretching tight over the waist of their celebration. I was reaching for a second bag when I heard it. A sound that didn't belong in my silent, lonely morning. The crunch of tires on gravel. My stomach dropped. Had they forgotten something? Were they coming back to yell at me for not cleaning fast enough? I froze, clutching the trash bag like a shield, watching the driveway through the kitchen window. But it wasn't the family limousine. It was a sleek, black sedan I had never seen before. And the woman stepping out of it wasn't my stepmother. It was my Aunt Valerie. I hadn't seen her in 5 years. Not since my grandfather's funeral. But you don't forget a woman like Valerie Hartwell. She was a shark in a Saint Laurent suit, the kind of corporate lawyer who ate CEOs for breakfast and used their severance packages as napkins. My father, Marcus, hated her. He called her a viper, because she was the only person in the family he couldn't bully. She didn't walk to the front door. She walked straight toward the service entrance where I was standing, her heels clicking a sharp, military rhythm on the pavement. She carried a heavy, rusted steel box under one arm, an ugly thing that looked completely out of place against her pristine blazer. "Aunt Valerie?" I stammered, wiping my hands on my jeans. "They're not home. They went to the Hamptons. I know where they are," she said, her voice cool and clipped. She stepped past me into the staff quarters, wrinkling her nose at the smell of the trash bags I'd just tied up. "And I know what they made you do. Leave the garbage, Caitlin. We have work to do." She set the steel box down on the small, scarred kitchen table. The sound it made, a heavy metallic thud, echoed in the small room. "What is that?" I asked. "This," she said, resting her hand on the lid, "is your grandfather's fail-safe. And inside is the reason your father left you here today." She pulled a key from her purse and unlocked it. There were no diamonds inside, no stacks of cash. Just papers. She pulled out a single document and slid it across the table to me. It wasn't a birthday card. It was a legal filing titled, Consent to Termination of Parental Rights. I stared at the words, my brain refusing to process them. I don't understand. Look at the signature, Valerie commanded. I looked. There, at the bottom of the page, in his flamboyant, arrogant scrawl, was my father's signature. Marcus Hartwell. It was dated October 15th, exactly 3 months ago. He signed this 90 days ago, Valerie explained, her voice hard. Do you know why? It wasn't because he hates you, Caitlin. Hate is an emotion. This was a business transaction. She tapped a second document, a financial audit summary for the $50 million merger he was celebrating right now. The merger deal required a personal liability audit. The investors wanted to ensure Marcus had zero outstanding personal financial obligations that could bleed into the company. You, my dear, are a financial obligation. College tuition, trust fund requirements, living expenses to him. You were a liability on a spreadsheet. I felt the blood drain from my face. He gave me up. To balance his books? He signed you over to me, Valerie corrected. A private adoption clause. He essentially sold his parental rights to clean up his credit report for the merger. He thinks he was being a genius corporate strategist. He thinks he just divested a bad asset before you turned 18. She leaned in, her eyes gleaming with a terrifying intensity. But Marcus made a mistake. He was so obsessed with the merger money that he forgot to read the fine print of your grandfather's original trust. She reached into the box again. He thinks you're nothing but a line item he deleted. But he didn't know that by signing that paper, he just handed you the weapon that's going to kill him. Valerie reached back into the rusted steel box and pulled out a thick, black leather-bound notebook. It looked like something from a bad detective movie, the kind of ledger where a bookie keeps his debts. She slammed it down on top of the termination papers. The private adoption was just the cleanup, she said. This was the crime. She flipped it open to a page bookmark with a red tab. The columns were handwritten in my father's distinct, jagged scrawl. I leaned in, squinting at the numbers. Date, January 1st. Recipient, Serenity Mental Health Services. Amount, $50,000. Date, February 1st. Recipient, Serenity Mental Health Services. Amount, $50,000. The entries went back for years. Every single month, $50,000 transferred from my trust fund to this clinic I had never heard of. I don't understand, I said, my voice trembling. I've never been to a place called Serenity. I've never even seen a therapist. I know, Valerie said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Because Serenity Mental Health doesn't exist. It's a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands. The sole signatory is Marcus Hartwell. I felt the room spin. He wasn't just stealing, he was laundering. But why use a fake mental health clinic? Why not a construction company or a consulting firm? Valerie turned the page, revealing a stack of printed emails clipped to the ledger. To drain a trust fund before the beneficiary turns 18, the trustee needs a valid reason, she explained. Medical emergency, educational needs, or incapacitation. She slid a letter across the table. It was addressed to the board of directors of Hartwell Industries, dated 3 years ago. It breaks my heart to inform the board that my daughter, Caitlin, has been diagnosed with severe, treatment-resistant schizophrenia. For her own safety and dignity, we are moving her to a private, full-time residential facility. She is not fit to manage her affairs, now or in the future. The air left my lungs. That was why I was hidden away in the staff quarters. That was why I was never allowed at company picnics, holiday parties, or public events. He hadn't hidden me because I was awkward or embarrassing. He had hidden me because he had sold the world a story that I was insane. He had painted me as a tragedy so he could rob me blind. He stole your money, Valerie said, her eyes burning into mine. But worse, he stole your voice. He made sure that if you ever tried to speak up, if you ever tried to claim your inheritance, the board would just see you as the crazy daughter off her meds. I looked down at my hands. They were the hands of a girl who had spent her 16th birthday scrubbing dried cheese off a counter because she thought she deserved it. I thought about the times I had apologized to him for existing. I thought about the nights I had cried myself to sleep, wondering what was wrong with me. Nothing was wrong with me. I looked at the ledger again. $50,000 a month. That money bought the Bentley in the garage. It bought the vintage wines. It bought the silence of his conscience. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap, like a bone breaking. It was quiet, like a lock clicking into place. I stood up. I walked over to the trash bag I had filled earlier, the debris of their celebration, and kicked it aside. I wasn't the help anymore. What time is the gala? I asked. Valerie checked her watch. Doors open in 2 hours. The Metropolitan Museum of Art. He's planning to announce the merger at 9. And he thinks I'm locked in here, cleaning his kitchen, I said. He thinks you're a liability he's already written off. Valerie corrected. He thinks you're crazy. I picked up the termination of rights document. I picked up the ledger. I held them tight, like weapons. He told the world I was crazy to steal my future, I said, my voice steady, cold, unrecognizable to my own ears. So tonight, I'm going to show him exactly what a crazy person can do. Valerie smiled, and for the first time, she looked like family. Go get dressed, Caitlin. We're going to a party. The Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City is designed to make you feel small. The soaring ceilings, the ancient stone, the sheer weight of history, it's all meant to intimidate. But tonight, my father, Marcus Hartwell, didn't look intimidated. He looked like he owned the place. Because for tonight, he basically did. I stood in the shadows of the Egyptian wing, peering through a gap in the heavy velvet curtains. The Temple of Dendur was lit up in gold and violet, the corporate colors of the new merged entity. 300 guests, investors, press, politicians were milling around the reflecting pool, sipping champagne that cost more per bottle than my entire existence had cost my father in the last year. There he was. Marcus. He stood on a raised dais, holding a crystal flute, laughing at something the CEO of the rival pharmaceutical company said. He looked radiant. He looked like a man who had successfully scrubbed his life clean of all stains. My stepmother, Tanya, was beside him, wearing a diamond necklace that glittered like ice. The twins, Caleb and Haley, were working the room, accepting congratulations for achievements they hadn't earned. They look happy, I whispered. They look expensive, Valerie corrected, standing beside me in the dark. She wasn't wearing a gown. She was wearing a severe black jumpsuit that made her look like a cat burglar. And they're celebrating on your dime. We didn't walk through the front door. We didn't have tickets. But Valerie had something better than an invitation. She had leverage. She tapped her earpiece. Henderson? We're in position. A side door clicked open, and a man stepped out of the shadows. He was older, wearing the black polo shirt of the event technical crew. I recognized him instantly from old photos in my mother's albums. Mr. Henderson. He had been the head of AV at Hartwell Industries for 20 years until Marcus fired him 3 months ago to replace him with Tanya's 22-year-old nephew. Marcus had fired the man who knew where all the cables were buried. That was his mistake. Henderson nodded at us. 5 minutes. Tanya's nephew is in the break room rebooting the audio system. He won't notice. That's all we need, I said. We climbed into the lighting grid and slipped into the glass control booth above the hall. Below, the Gala buzzed. On the main monitor, Marcus's presentation waited. Hartwell Industries. A legacy of family values. Henderson checked the schedule. He speaks in 2 minutes. Family first, a tear or two, then the video. Perfect. I opened my battered laptop, the most dangerous object in the room. HDMI input 2, Henderson said. That's the main projection wall. Marcus stepped onto the stage, smiling, confident. He thought I was still locked away, invisible. Ready? Henderson asked. I plugged in the cable. My desktop appeared. One file sat at the center. The truth, Marcus began. Thank you all for coming. Tonight is about our future, but first, a painful absence. My daughter Caitlin is in treatment for severe schizophrenia. Sympathy rippled through the crowd. We've spared no expense, he continued. This merger is for her protection. 300 glasses rose to his lie. Now? Henderson whispered. Now. The lights cut. Darkness swallowed the room. My recorded voice echoed through the speakers. I don't need your prayers, Marcus. I need you to read page 49. Number 5. Security, he shouted. The projection wall flared to life, displaying a legal document. Consent to termination of parental rights. Signed, Marcus Hartwell. October 15. The room gasped. You didn't send me to a hospital, my voice said. You signed me away. The screen split. On one side, monthly $50,000 payments to Serenity Mental Health. On the other, its corporate filing sole beneficiary, Marcus Hartwell. You stole $2 million from my trust. Marcus froze. Then a video played. My grandfather's voice filled the hall. If Marcus Hartwell terminates guardianship over my granddaughter, he forfeits trusteeship. The controlling stake transfers directly to her. The lights snapped back on. Aunt Valerie stepped onto the stage. You wanted to be clever, Marcus. But that signature didn't make her an orphan. It made her your boss. She faced the crowd. The merger is canceled. He doesn't own this company anymore. Marcus turned desperately to his son. Caleb, tell them. Caleb didn't move. He unbuttoned his jacket and looked away. That was when Marcus broke. I walked onto the stage not as a daughter, but as a CEO. I took the microphone from his hand. "You called me a liability," I said. "But in business, the real liability is a partner you can't trust." I nodded to security. "Remove him. He's trespassing." Marcus didn't resist. The next morning, I evicted his family from the mansion. It was company property. His assets were frozen. He now waits for trial with a public defender. I didn't keep the company. I sold my shares, funded a foundation for children harmed by financial abuse, and bought a small house by the sea. They tried to bury me. They forgot I was a seed. If you believe in watching power shift back where it belongs, subscribe. This isn't the last story.